Good morning. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use vectors. It's very similar to arrays, but at the same time, it's very weird because the good thing about vectors is that you can store more values than what you can do in arrays. And pretty much, I already have a function. I already have my function, my program here. Remember that in order to use vectors you have to include it. You don't have to include it, but then you will have to use vectors every time you write vectors, and it's not very cool. So be smart and include your vectors. So pretty much my function is about the same thing I did with the for loops, but instead of that I'm going to use the vectors. It's kind of simple because in vectors I can store many things, such as in arrays. So if you know how to use arrays, vectors will be quite simple. The syntax for vectors, if you include this, is quite simple because first you put vectors, you open you open this, and you inside that part you put the parameter you want to use. Sorry, the parameter, no, the type of number you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use float because I'm working with average, and the name of the function you want to say, and the variable x. The reason why I included x here is because I want it to be the same number that it's inputted here. So first, this is how to write the syntax of vectors, how to create a vector. Now I'm going to save values in the vector. You can do it in two ways. The first one is writing it like vectors, as in vectors, the position you want it to be, starting from 0. So let's imagine that my vector function was 3. So I'm going to start from 0. I'm going to input my value, saying I don't know, 100, and then vector 1, it's 90, and vector, I have a mistake because it's vectors, because that's how I called my function. So it's vectors 2, and I have 80. So 80. So you have 1, 2, 3 as the parameter you defined here. So this is how to input values inside a vector. But in this case, I didn't do that. I used the for loop, saying that I defined I 0. It has to be smaller than the amount I have here, and I input every value inside this vector. So I'm pretty much doing the same thing. I'm putting vector 0, input the vector in 0, and I put the amount, and then it does the for loop. And then stores it in vector 1, and that's how I do it until I get to the vector amount I have here. That's a very quite simple way to do it, and it's very useful. Then finally I did the same thing with the for loop, but this time I use this function that's called vector add. What this does is that it tells me where a vector is. For example, let's say I have I don't know, 5 vectors, and I say vectors at, I don't know, vectors at 3. So it's going to show me the fourth position, and it's going to show me that value. So what I did here was kind of add all the vectors with this function says float add. So it adds all the vectors in each position. I didn't really have to do that, but again, you don't have to do it, but this is just a way that I want to explain you how to locate a vector in any position. So another way to do it is saying vectors, just calling your function front as it says here, front. And what this does is shows you the first vector that you have. In this case, is going to be vector 0, this is another way to put it. There's many other functions to locate where a vector is, but this is pretty much what I'm going to do. So this is my function that says total. So this is pretty much what it's going to do, is input all the vectors and add them together. It returns the addition of all the vectors. And then finally, in the main function, I defined a variable called average, and here I put the sum of the total I got in my function divided by the numbers of subjects I input here, and it says cout your average is, and the answer. So we're going to see if this works. I'm going to save it again, and that's C++, vectors.cpp. It compiles. I'm going to run my program to see if anything's wrong. How many subjects do you have? I don't know. You can input whatever value you want. I'm going to try with 3. No, let's say, okay, 3. Input 3 grades. I'm going to work with decimals, for example, 89.7, 56.9, 100, and then, oh sorry, I just said 3. So what I did, let's check if the answer is right. So I have 89.7 plus 56.9 plus 100 divided by 3. So we know it's right. If you get these grades, you know you will pass the course. And pretty much this is a very simple functions of vectors. There's a lot of things to say about this, and you can do a lot of things with this. Another thing about vectors is that you don't have to input floats. You can put characters, you can put strings, you can put pretty much whatever you want. Thank you very much. See you next time.